Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and this is the Savage Board of Conan, a YouTube series where it is a group of people, like a board meeting, but we're going to be talking about the adventures of Conan. That's a working title. We might go with Battle Cry later on. So let us know in the comments. But I'm joined by two of the playtesters for this game. So we have Jaded and we have GJ, and they're very instrumental in whipping this into shape. And in a future video, I'm going to go into more about the evolution of the design of the game. But like I said, they're very helpful. They're very knowledgeable about it, and they both seem to enjoy the game quite a bit. So Jaded has his pledge already, has been shipped to him. GJ and I are still waiting. His is caught up in customs. Mine is in limbo. I don't have no idea when I'm going to get a copy. So this is a
Privilege.
this is a TTS version that is still under construction. I did have the image of the Crom-sized playmat, which is in here, and some of the components. So I'm getting to the point where I've got everything in there, but yeah, still a ways to go. But in this video, we wanted to talk a little bit about your expectations of this game. What is this game? It's not easy for a lot of people to describe it because it's hard to compare to some other existing games. There are some familiar mechanisms and there's some elements like this portion of the game is like another game, but there's so many other portions. And then just, a lot of people have the expectation that if it's a dice game, that it's really light and kind of fluffy, and maybe there's not a whole lot of theme that's in there, and so that's what we're going to kind of discuss, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, at this point, I think I would turn it over to you guys to just kind of get things started with how you describe this and how we would get people to kind of understand, manage their expectations of what it is that they're going to be getting into once they learn to play the game and start playing it.
Jaded.
Well, I'll start off and I'll just say that I think a lot of people get caught up on just what the idea of the game is. I think there's the big Monolith Conan game where it's like little battles and it's you go up and you hit a guy with your axe and you do very granular movements. But this is like you've got the whole, or at least a large chunk of the Hyborian Age accessible, and you're traveling around doing adventures, and it's all very Conan, but it's at a much wider scope than I think a lot of people expect or have even seen in a Conan board game before. I think that's one of the reasons I really like it because I mean, I think any Conan game, people are just going to make it a little dueling game or a little skirmish thing. But this, I think, is something a lot cooler for me personally and a lot more fun. You can get like a grand sort of story rather than just a little footnote at the bottom of a page.
No, I think I very much agree. The other thing that I see, especially on BGG, a few people being confused or surprised about is that this is not a light game by any mean. The rulebook itself is quite hard and complicated to go through because there's so many moving pieces that they all have to click together in order to actually understand what you're even supposed to do every single turn, what are you playing for, what to look for, and basically how do you actually have fun in this? Because trust me, this is fun. This game is actually fun. Like, we didn't try to design this something to sell stuff, especially since Jaden and I get absolutely nothing out of Fry other than pride. So we wanted something fun for people to enjoy, and this is not something you pick up and just read 20 minutes of rulebook and then play. This probably requires a little more time and preparation, but as far as I've seen, everyone who has gone through and passed that initial phase has enjoyed it very, very much.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why um, it takes a minute to get into it is that in a general way, it's a little bit like three or four games rolled into one, three or four different dice games, and that was on purpose. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have a situation where each player had some custom dice, and in each phase of the game, you're using the dice, but you're using them in different ways. And so we talk about one of the first times you're going to use the dice is when you're trying to do a roll along the plot track. So you're trying to match the symbols in the circles, and you get up to 3 rolls to do it. And I describe it as kind of a Yahtzee-like effect. And I saw a comment where somebody was like, a Yahtzee Conan game doesn't interest me at all. And I'm like, well, I think it's unfair to characterize it as that's what it is. That's one aspect of it where you're matching the symbols. Although at the end of the day, it is a dice game, so there's a certain level of abstraction that is inevitable in any kind of a dice game, especially one where you're using it in a lot of different ways. So that was one way with the plot roll. Then in the main phase, it's very different. You're using your results to do actions based on what your character can do, and they have a few options for a lot of those results. And you're trying to think about, all right, what is it I want to achieve? Do I want to try to move up the achievement track? Do I want to get to a kingdom with an adventure? Do I want to duel the other player? And a lot of that is driven by what you've rolled, but also the different ways you want to try to score victory points. And then you might go into the encounter phase, so it's an optional phase, but it's pretty easy to unlock the encounters. And so that is a different way that you're using the dice. You've got one chance to try to get the results you need, but you could have staged results ahead of time that you knew that you were going to roll if that space was available on the track. And if Conan can't do the roll, any of his successes get applied, making it easier for the next player to complete it, and because they only get one roll as well. And then you've got the adventure phase, which is the fourth way you're going to be using your dice. And doing an adventure is also quite unique with the way that the dice are used. So trying to explain all those different things, it's the rule book, it has to be long, just because one, you're the use of the dice is very different, and leaving out the idea of a fight in a duel is really another way you're using the dice. So each of those has got to be explained. It's got to have examples. You want to have nice images in there, but then you're explaining things like all the different God token effects and all the different fate token things and how the plot cards work, and the different kingdoms have unique effects. So, and the characters all have unique abilities. So there's a lot of different components, and a lot of variability and variety that is in there. So yeah, all that's got to be explained. So it is kind of a long rule book, and I think some people, it's not sticker shock, but it's like, whoa, I thought this was just a dice game, and it's 30-page rule book explaining everything. Yeah, it's got a lot of depth, and it's not obvious right away when you're playing. Like if you're playing like zombie dice, you're like, okay, I got to roll brains and not shotguns, and that's basically it. You've learned the game. There's a couple other steps, but this one, because there's a number of ways to score victory points. There are 3 different ways that the game can be triggered to end. So you have to pay attention to not just what you're rolling, but what the other players are rolling. So yeah, it's got there's a lot going on, and like I said, it's hard to compare it to other games. Like the main phase is a little bit like Roll for the Galaxy. And so if somebody was like, well, it's just Conan Roll for the Galaxy, again, you can't really say, oh, that's what the game is, because that's just 25% of the game, maybe. So probably even that's too high. So it's 20% of what the game is that game. So yeah, I mean, that's why I think it is, it's hard to sum up, but I enjoy it quite a bit. And I'm a huge Conan fan, and I have been since the 80s, the early 80s. Even before the Arnold movie, which was 82, I was reading Conan comic books. And this is at the end. This is really about immersing the players in a Conan comic book. That's kind of the style of what the whole gameplay experience is supposed to be.
One thing I wanted to mention before I forget is that This game might look like analysis paralysis hell, where you have 1700 different things you can do, and one may be better than the others, but it's going to take you ages to actually understand what's going on. And most of the time, you don't play it that way. I like to describe this as a weird balance between active and reactive, because especially in the main phase, you have a limited number of things you can do depending on which roles you got. And so you'll have, I don't know, movement, and then you have the choice of where to move. But more often than not, you're not just deciding what you are going to do, but you are going to adapt and react to what other players are doing. Is your ally trying to help you, or is he trying to screw you over? Is the foe going to just do its own thing on the other side of the map, or is he going to come and fight you, or maybe set traps or whatever? The interesting thing for me is that you every single turn feels entirely different. I described in a comment on a thread on BGG that this game never felt the same in two games I've played of it, and I've played this game a lot, like a lot over the course of many years. So this is not something you can explain in a couple of words, mostly because it's so different every single time. It has a few things common from other games, but I don't think any other game ever has these system used in these ways and how they play into each other. So my best recommendation for getting into it is just taking it slow, ask a lot of questions, try stuff out, play a few turns in your head or on the table if you can, and just see why and how things click. Then it will become a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think this game really does a great job of making you feel certain emotions without having flavor text or anything like that. Like, it's just scenarios where, for example, the ally and Conan are always in the same spot, and they can both use their movement dice to move Conan around. But you get into a situation where Conan doesn't roll any movements and the ally rolls like three. And now all of a sudden it's the ally's choosing where Conan's going to go this turn. And you might have two adventures that are nearby. One of them, Conan has a lot of fate tokens to help him complete. And the other one, the ally has a lot of fate tokens to help complete. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, Conan, you might want to go to this one over here, but I think we're going to go down a different route. Like it evokes a lot of like very Conan feeling situations without needing to like draw a card from a deck and read it out loud. And then you've also got those like beautiful comic illustrations as well, which is like got to be the perfect medium for art on cards. It's just it's really evocative through and through, but it's not in the usual way that a game like this might be. Uh, like I think a good example might be that Star Wars Outer Rim game, where it's a similar sort of thing where you're in a world and you've got things you can go and do. But that game, there's a lot of drawing cards and reading text to tell you what you're doing. But this, I feel like, accomplishes a similar thing without all that. You just play the game.
You just
Yeah,
do the thing.
Yeah.
yeah, and part of the the I think what makes the game work is that Conan and the other players for that matter, they have a variety of ways to accomplish something. So,
Mhm.
Conan is not relying on I have to roll that move symbol on my move dice in order to get to an adventure. That's one way. He's got a wild symbol, which is the star. That can be any result that you want on two of his dice. And then he's got, of course, his unique character symbol, which is like a semi-wild. It can be used as most of the other symbols, but not, for Conan, he can't use it for scry or for sorcery, but he can use it for moves. So if he's rolled, like on this result here, I've got two wilds and I've got the character, so I have three dice that can move. And if this one had been actually, I don't know if he has moved. Oh, yeah, he does. So they're all. I mean, all four of these dice, if these were the results, can be used for move. And that, if in a two-player game, Conan is just relying on himself to get around. But that's also a matter of, if Conan is, down here on the on the Black Coast, you've got the movement with the moves, but you also have the sail action, which is using a pirate result, which again is another result that he has on his dice. But here, I've got two wilds. Either those could be pirate, and this can be deployed to it. That lets him move from this kingdom to any other kingdom with that same attribute. Well, that's not one of them. Sometimes that one is, but yeah, you can say, yeah, I'm moving all the way up to here. So even though there's 20 kingdoms in the base board and another 8 here on the expansion board, if Conan needs to get all the way down to here, it's not like he's got to go. It's going to take 12 movements to get there. He could probably do it in 2. It just depends. This is a unique situation where sometimes this one has the attribute and sometimes it doesn't. So, but you could be like, yeah, I'm going to move to here, and now I just got to cross country over to there. And because there's always 3 different adventures, you've got some options. So it may be like, I really want to go to this one because it's 3 points, and but it's going to be easier to get to one of these other ones like Koth if he's like in the middle there. So he's like, yeah, it might be easier to get to Koth from where I am if I'm over here in Karaja. I only have to use 1 move to get over there. And looking at what else can Conan do, stealing gold, getting more gold is good because he can buy more dice. If he's got fate tokens that don't match the adventure, he can do a trade action to trade one for one that he does need. He can try to use these actual symbols that he's rolled, like if he's rolled a warrior or he's rolled a pirate, trying to get to a kingdom with that attribute so that he can move up on the achievement track, because that's a good way to get victory points, a free die, other goodies like gold and fate tokens. So yeah, it's a matter of for me, and I've said this before in some of the other videos on this channel, that as a designer, I want to force players to have to make decisions, and I like them to have to choose between 2 things that they want to do, rather than 2 things that they can do, and so they have to just figure out, what do you want to do, and there's not very many bad answers like, oh, you're spending all your time moving up on the achievement track. That seems like a waste. Not at all. You can get up to 24 points that way. In fact, if whoever wins, often that's how they did it. They're like, oh, I was behind in the score until we triggered the end game, and then I added another 20 points to however many points to my score there, and boom, got the win. And so, or if you're like, oh, I want to get a lot of fate tokens and then do an adventure, great, now I don't need anyone else's dice, and so that was a good idea. Or I'm like, I'm gonna get in a fight with the foe because I've rolled all these warriors, and I got into a fight once and got 10 points that way. So it's also probably not a bad idea. Just every once in a while, you are going to be subject to the roll of the dice, but again, you've got the mitigators, you've got the god tokens, many of which will let you either re-roll or change a result. You've got the fate tokens, which there's no limit to how many you can have, although there's a limited number of available, 4 of each type. And so those can let you change it. And then even your unique abilities, some of them will help you. So like Conan's other one here, this one lets him use any fate token as a warrior. And so if for some reason he's like, oh, I really needed that warrior, and all I had was a trade, well, he basically, Conan can pick that barrel up and kill you with it. So that's really what that is equating to, or whatever the goods were. Everything's a weapon in Conan's hand. So yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming, but you just have to dissect it down to what it is that you are trying to do, and there's a couple of good answers for that, and then you've got resources at your disposal to usually do it, or at least start moving in that direction.
And I think it is going to be overwhelming your first time. The first time I played this, it was with Jack and GJ, and they both played it, I think, a handful of times before. And they're doing all these things. Oh, yeah, I'm adding a die to the encounter track and this and that. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And then, but then after 2 or 3 games, I was able to grok all the systems in my head, and now I'm starting to make actual plans. It's like, okay, I'm going to go into this as the ally, and I'm going to try to focus really hard on this kind of area. And then, oh shoot, none of my dice really complement that. Now I got to figure something else out. Now I'm going to do this instead. And it works really well. but it's very wide. You have to really understand the whole game before you can start making strategies.
But the beautiful thing is that once you do, well, maybe you are going to start the game as 3 or 4 players with maybe these characters, which are pretty standard, pretty simple. They all do one thing and they do it pretty well. Then maybe you become comfortable and change an ally, and maybe you change a foe, maybe you change Conan. Maybe you start adding one component from an expansion, maybe you add bazaar cards. Suddenly you have more challenge tokens. Maybe you are going to play a scenario, maybe you are going to use the Chrome token. And now suddenly everyone can be Conan if they want to. And that adds an incredible amount of depth and replayability as well. So if the first step is the one that scares you, the moment you take it and you're actually playing the game and understanding what's going on and how everything works together, you're going to have a lot of stuff to play around with. Probably too much for someone, but it's definitely something that I at least enjoy a lot. Just being able to say, okay, sure, I enjoyed this mechanism, this, and this. I'll just play this game this time, and it will work. It's going to be wild. It's probably going to be strange the first few times, but it's definitely going to be a good experience that you hopefully will remember for a while.
Yeah, and I think that the solo mode does a pretty good job of immersing you in a lot of what the multiplayer game experience is going to do. It's not an exact, one for one. Oh, this does this, this does that. There are some minor changes between them to make it, an enjoyable experience and not so much bureaucracy and paperwork. It is more puzzly as you're trying to optimize your best moves in the solo mode. That's largely around the main phase, but some of the other phases are pretty similar to how they would be in the multiplayer. And I know that Greg with Future Pastimes was not he was not confident of being able to beat us after how often we played it a lot more, and we're much better at it than Greg was. But then he was like, all right, I'm playing the solo mode. So he was doing that, and it really boosted his confidence. We still beat him pretty soundly. The first time he's like, I'm ready to take you guys on. I think I can do it. I know what I'm doing now, and I've got some good ideas for how to optimize the whatever. But part of it, like whenever we play tested, Greg was always the foe. He was like, I just like to be the foe, and I just like doing sorcery, putting challenge tokens down on the board and harassing Conan. And so I think, the more that you can play all of the characters, the better you get at understanding your own optimal moves based on what everyone has done. You can look around and you can say, oh, and you're playing the foe, and you're like, with this particular role, Conan only has one die that he could use in a fight or a duel, and maybe you have rolled several that. And remember that the foe often has more dice to begin with because it's just easier. His first die is usually cheaper. In fact, his second die is also cheaper than Conan. So a lot of times the foe has got more dice. So if they rolled this, for example, they've got 4 dice that they could use in a fight against or a duel against Conan. And so they might be tempted, Conan's orange dice, again, they're his best dice for fights and duels. But every once in a while you're feeling especially lucky. And they might have some fate tokens to help out, or a god token like the set token, which lets you change to any result. In a mirror, lets you change your character result into a warrior. So they're like, yeah, I've got some insurance here, so it might be a good time to do that. And their hope might be that Conan is in a kingdom with an adventure. There could be an adventure here in Darfur, and so he come in and picks a fight. And if he can win the duel against Conan, he can kick Conan into another kingdom. And if he doesn't have any way to move back in here, then the foe gets to move up on the plot and maybe get some points. Maybe they're already here and they're like, or let's say they're here and they're like, great, I get to move up for free. Now I've unlocked a free die and I got 3 points for just moving up to that space there. So just by looking and knowing that Conan was weak in that particular round in this phase, that you might normally you'd be like, I have no interest in dueling Conan because he will usually win a duel. He's just better at it than anybody else. But yeah, if those dice didn't turn up, give him very many options for that sort of thing, he might have been like, I was going to steal some gold, try to move to an adventure. That's really all I could do this round. In that phase, then yeah, it's taking advantage of that and changing your tactics based on what the others roll. And yeah, Conan was limited in his movements here. Only 2 dice that he can use to move. And if you have an ally in play, you got to take into account, like in this case, they have 2 dice that they could use to move Conan. And it's trying to figure out, where do you think Conan is going to go? If you've got, we've got 2 adventures here where the dice are worth 1 point each. This one's worth 3 points. So you take that into your calculus as well. Which, how many of these dice do you think of yours do you think Conan would use in order to complete this adventure? And if you're like, well, you might use one of my dice, I mean, that's 3 points. And if you're like, well, he's, even if he uses 2 of my dice on this one, that's only 2 points. So, you might put challenge tokens down here to try to drive Conan to this one so that it's easier for him to get to it. So like I said, you have a number of interesting decisions that you can make in the game, and that's part of why I think it has that depth.
And then there's also a lot of different strategies you can take just depending on what character you're playing. Obviously, if you only have the base game, you've only got the one Conan. But for the ally and the foe, there's a lot of different options there. Like for foes, there's one who starts the game in this next door kingdom to Conan, and he's pretty good at fights as well. And then there's another one who starts off in the Eastern Desert, which takes 2 movements to leave it. But he's pretty good at doing sorcery and putting down challenge tokens. So where one might be always one step behind Conan threatening a duel, the other one might just be camped out in the same spot for half the game, just terrorizing him with these tokens.
Yeah, my favorite ally is Alvazar, who has one ability to just score victory points by putting his dice on the encounter track. And he's like, Conan, I think we should encounter the frost giant and the Scray and these warriors. And again, the turn order, if it's clockwise, if Conan goes first in the encounters and doesn't finish any, then in this situation here, the ally would be next, and they might have a bunch of successes already on the encounter track, and who knows what other goodies they have to help them to complete it. And so now they're like, great, I completed this one. That's a couple of victory points plus, oh, sorry about that, Conan. You got 2 wounds. So Conan is 2 fewer dice to use on the adventure, which means he's going to have to use more of my dice for points. So that's, even as the ally, this is often my strategy, is I kind of put some dice up here to keep things lively. It can backfire, because if Conan has, if he's got extra dice, or he's got encounter tokens, or he just has a good roll on some of these things, he can be like, great, that advances me on the warrior track. That's nice. This one is 2 victory points, and I get to roll a kingdom die for wherever I am. So in this case, it would be the Eldritch die, and you might pick up a nice fate token there. Oh yeah, there you go. Got a nice kingdom token, which we wouldn't need for any of these adventures, but the fate tokens can be helpful for advancing on the plot sometimes, depending on what those required results are. And you can, of course, do a trade action with you don't even need the trade thing. You can use your character to trade one for the other. So like I said, you've got oodles of options, and that can be a negative, but I think it's a positive, especially like as you get more familiar with the game. You're like, oh great, I've got so many good options, and I've got a plan B that I can enact. And so I'm not always, I think sometimes with dice games, you're like, it is what it is. You rolled it, and if you get a lousy roll, then that's it. You're just kind of like, well, this round or this phase or whatever is just a bad one for me, and too much luck of the dice. But here you've got, if you don't roll what you get, sometimes you have an equally good alternative that you can do. You might have an alternative way to do what you were planning to do, and you might also have ways of just changing those results. So the game arms you with a lot of ways to keep positively moving forward, scoring victory points, which is what you need to win the game. So there.
Shall we quickly do a quick rundown of what should you focus on for each role you're playing in your first few games? Like, how do you play Conan, the foe, or the ally early on? What's your objective? What are you thinking when you're playing in your first few
Yeah,
games?
I think we can all weigh in on that, but I'll start. I mean, when I'm Conan, I think for me, I do always want to try to do an adventure, and that is because I think that the rewards for the adventures are usually pretty good. So like this one for the Den of the Pleasure Goddess, if you complete it, there's not a lot of points. It's only 1 point per die, and there's only 4 results that you're needing. So I don't care about using other players' dice on these low point adventures. So I do until I've started accumulating fate tokens or have a lot of dice. I try to go for the 1 point adventures as much as I can. So I'm like, great, I gave 2 points to the ally, 2 points to the foe. I didn't get any points, but I'm going to get a sorcery fate token, and I'm going to get to move up on 2 tracks here of the achievement track. So, and the achievement track I think is my secret. It's not really a secret, but my driving thing for victory points ultimately. Because I'm not going to be getting a lot of points from the adventures. That's going to be the others, but there's big points at the end of the game if you've moved up on a lot of these. And it has, you're getting stuff along the way, which is nice. And this is probably Conan's best bet for getting a free die every round. So once you get at least one of your tokens up here, now you have 5 dice. And what's nice about it is that it's not like, oh, I've unlocked this die, and so now I've got to always use it. This goes back, if I've got 5 dice, the 5th one always goes back, even though I've unlocked it. But at the start of the next round, I've got a free die, and I can be like, you know what? I want this one because this die has got, it's got pirate and thief results on it, and I need to move up on those tracks. So this is the die I'm going to get. Or I'm like, well, I'm probably going to need a lot of warriors this round. So this one has warriors on 3 sides, including the double warrior. So maybe that die. So you've got that flexibility of switching out to which die that you want. So those are the big things that I focus on as Conan. You guys have any other like a different alternate strategy?
I like to not sleep on encounters because they are really good as well. They can give you points for defeating them. They can give you good rolls. They can cripple both the foe and the ally. And if you have good rolls and you're already in a kingdom with an adventure, and I don't know, you don't need to use any of the other results you have left, look up there and maybe you have a couple of spots you can fill. Because every single foe die that is put up there means you're going to use 1 less die to roll for the encounter. So you really want to avoid that situation. You really want to get a step ahead because encounters can also backfire really hard, especially some of them. Like 2 wounds just before the adventure can mean you're not going to fulfill the adventure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, encounters are a really good way to just get ahead. If you can defeat all of the 3 of them, right now you would be getting 1 advancement, which is always good, 3 points in a roll of the Kingdom Die, and another 2 points in a roll of the Kingdom Die. So this is a really, really good reward amount, even though it's not going to happen. I don't think there's any wealthy with those 2 symbols, but even if there was, it's a lot of stuff for relatively little if you prepare well enough. And if you have a couple of god tokens like Ymir or Mitra that let you prepare and change what rolls you get, encounters can be really, really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it sometimes it's a risk and reward. You're trying to balance out like how risky is it going to be, and yeah, like I said, if you're getting your dice up there, then because sometimes like the foe and the ally, they're just ignoring this. They're doing their own thing. They're doing sorcery or they're moving around to pick up stuff, and they're trying to find ways to get fate tokens so that they can advance at the end of the round by cashing in the ones that match these achievements. And suddenly you're getting down to it, and Conan is like, well, maybe I'll throw one of my dice up there. And because remember, anything that Conan puts up there that matches symbols that he needs, like if he's like, look at this, a double warrior, maybe I'll put that right up here. and if you get enough dice to unlock it, does double warriors. Like on this and against a Yathka, that's 2 successes right there. He just needs to either get a scry or a warrior to beat that one. Here, he just needs 2 more warriors, and those are the easiest things for him to roll. So 1 die, and he's halfway completed with this encounter. So yeah, it's not, the rewards on these are usually not massive, but they can be just the thing that you needed. 2 victory points might be just what you need to move up on the track to get a gold or to get another fate token matching where you are. So it's seeing, it's not really the tea leaves, but just looking at, oh, you know what? I'm 2 points away from this, or I'm one space away on the plot track from getting another free die. And so, Conan with 6 dice that he's not having to spend any gold on is very formidable. And so that's the other part of that. What about playing as a foe? I'll let you guys, since you mostly do end up playing as the foe. What is your approach to maximizing your victory points?
JD, I'll leave you.
All right. Well, I mean, I think it's always funny when I as the foe and I've got those challenge tokens. I find it really funny to put one down where it's reachable by both me and Conan slash the ally, and then kind of bluff whether or not it's a good effect or not, because they may have a big skull on them, but some of the effects, even a lot of them, are benefits. You could be getting gold or getting fate tokens and whatnot, or you could be getting attacked and brutally wounded. So it's funny to put it down between the both of us and be like, well, what do you think? You gonna call my bluff? You think it's good or bad? And then as they try to snatch it out from under me, it's actually just, a temple of Set or something really awful like that. So that's what I love to do, but it's not may not necessarily be the most optimal thing, but I think it's really funny.
I kind of agree. Just focus on challenge tokens if you have a character that works well with them. Like Totamon is decent at it, mostly because it allows you to where is it? The encounter is what he's focusing on, but challenge tokens are something you will want to do anyway, since you start with 1 and you have the, as Jade said, the action of saying, well, Conan, what do you think this is? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this terrible? And you being able to place them almost anywhere, as long as there's no other character or other challenge token in the kingdom, gives you a lot of agency, and it's like both extremely fun to play around and extremely powerful. Because a fight or duel that Conan has to fight mid round can completely change what Conan was planning to do. If he gets wounded, maybe now he's not going to go for that 3-point adventure, since it's probably not worth it. Maybe he's going now to pivot into another 1-pointer adventure, which is obviously not good for him. And as a foe, if you focus on challenge token, is a lot of war of attrition. It's not one single big blow that is going to change everything, but it's a lot of little small things that just put you always 1 step ahead, 1 step in front, always have another ace up your sleeve that is really going to mess with Conan's plans. Well, I mentioned encounter track for Conan, but as I also said, every single die on this track that the foe puts is 1 less die that Conan and the ally can use to complete encounters. You as the
Yeah.
foe don't have this like malus. You just have extra results you can use for when it will be your turn to complete them. So again, it's a risk reward thing for both players for all 3 roles. But depending on which fate tokens you have, which challenge tokens, and how you have the ability to change the encounters as well by cycling them, and maybe you see that none of the adventures match one of the encounters, you can just say, well, I don't like that one, let me discard it and let's draw 2 others and see what other terrible things can Conan go against. And then you pick, and now you suddenly, everything changed. 1 simple action, and you as the foe have a lot of agency. And honestly, it's probably the most fun role to play because everyone wants to play the bad guy. And let's be honest, it's just fun.
There's a good variety of foes too, and they have
Mm.
every character has 2 different abilities that they can use, and in a lot of cases you're going to be mostly using the whichever one you start with. Although there are ways to flip to the other one, and some of them you have to flip. But it's good to look at those, and that's a good, finding ways to exploit your ability is a good general strategy to use. So Tathaman is really focused a lot on the encounters. He's got ways to, every time he places a die up there, he can get rid of one. It's like, I don't think Conan's going to fight against this guy. And so he gets to draw two and say like, oh, I think this is much more likely to be what you'll be facing. And that's a little bit harder. He can only get warriors with his orange dice. So anything he rolls with the other dice are just not usable against the gray ape. The other general thing that I tried to do as the foe is that they have a slightly easier time getting along on that plot track. And that's partly because if Conan doesn't do an adventure, then the foe moves up automatically one space. And so that's part of it. If they're collecting, if they're being thoughtful about what kind of fate tokens to get, and that's the thing is I tend to use my god tokens and my fate tokens early as the foe, to see if I can get up the plot track. It's nice to get that bonus too, but for me, it's just like I want to get here to this free die. That's my biggest objective, and then the points are nice. And here, you get to halfway along. Every time you automatically move up, you're getting more points. So that would be 3 points. If I automatically move here, that's 4 more points because it's equal to the chapter number. And so those are starting to be bigger moves. The other thing is that, and a lot of people don't take advantage of this, but when you start, especially when you have a lot more dice, when you've got character results or wilds, you can spend a bunch of them to just move up on the plot track. And the number of dice that it will cost you is equal to the chapter number you're moving on. So if you're like, all right, I moved up here, in the main phase, I could say, yeah, I'm going to spend one character because I'm still in chapter 1 to move up again. Now, again, outside of the resource phase, you don't get the rewards, but you still get the point and you are still moving along. And so now in the second round, I just need to roll 2 moves to move up again. And if I get a warrior, that's a bonus. And then it would cost me 2 dice with character results to move up again. And then if Conan doesn't end up doing an adventure, like at the end of the second round, I could be all the way to here, free die. So yeah, if you get the right kind of rolls and you maybe don't push your luck too far with some of these plot rolls, you don't get too greedy for the bonus if you don't need to, and you're using your god tokens. Just choosing which god token, be like, all right, which one's going to help me to get that? So like, you don't want to roll a character result in the resource phase on that plot roll, but if you've got the Emir token, you can change a character into a warrior. So you're like, okay, that's a nice. And sometimes you're like, well, I don't need that warrior, but now at least you can re-roll this die. This lets you change one of your results to a thief. So that's another way to get around having to use a character result as a strike. This one, Ishtar lets you re-roll a die. Mitra lets you re-roll all the dice that you rolled. So a lot of times we're like, ooh, shiny Zath. I want to use that one to get all the points for the adventure. But if it's not available, or you've got it but you're saving it until you actually score a bunch of points, then the next time you're getting a god token, you maybe want to pick up something. And it's going to depend on your mix because there's more than these. But there's a number of them that can be employed to make this advancement on this track a little bit easier. So that's one of my other focuses when I'm the bad guy, is I'm trying to get up along that plot track, at least up to the here, because it's easier for the foe to get this die for free often than it is to get this die. Because here they got to focus on fate tokens matching these 3 attributes, and then they got to be in a kingdom that matches the attribute and the fate tokens they're holding. So this one's great for pirate, but if all I got are warrior fate tokens, then I got to get out of here. I got to move into Darfur. I got to maybe go down to Black Kingdoms or whatever, and try to match it up that way. But this is a slower path to get on there. Anybody else, or you want to talk about the ally? Because that is its own special kind of gameplay.
I love playing the ally.
I think it's the hardest by far because it's also the weirdest. Because you as the ally want to help Conan, but not too much, just enough. And that enough is a hard point to actually reach because at the end of the day, there's going to be one winner and one winner only. So you as the ally, you want to Conan to do good because you are kind of stuck with him. You're going to go in the same places as Conan is going, but at the same time, you want to make put Conan in an uncomfortable position enough that he wants to use your stuff rather than the foes. So you're playing this weird balancing act of I want to help Conan, but also kind of not. And each ally plays very, very differently from each other. What you are going to mostly do is move Conan around most of the time. You're going to go, at least the way I play him is like I'm the one moving Conan more than Conan. We are going to plan ahead where which adventure we are going to go, but at my pace. I decide when we are getting to that kingdom. If I want to take a little detour to advance on an achievement track, or to advance on some place. I'm going to do it, not Conan, because I can just move him wherever I want. If I can move Conan in a kingdom with a fate token, I'm going to get it, not Conan, because it's my turn. So there's a lot of minor and small things that like this that you can easily exploit, but you have to remember to also focus on the adventures themselves. Since Conan generally prefers giving you the ally points rather than the foe, mostly because the foe doesn't has so many ways to get so many points, and them generally going last and like not really being in a spot to make like be impactful in adventures means that you as the ally have a really good chance of trying like forcing Conan to use your dice, and even just one two dice every single adventures are going to stack up. So the way I play the ally is try to mitigate what the foe is doing, but late. In a way that Conan doesn't get too far ahead, isn't doing too well, and kind of force Conan to take my stuff instead of his.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why Conan is more likely to want to use allied dice is because if Conan, if the foe has rolled symbols that can be applied to an adventure and doesn't use them, if the ally doesn't fill those gaps and Conan himself doesn't actually finish it by rolling the final results required, you check to see if the foe can apply any. So if they're like, this could be the kingdom that we needed, and we needed a sorcery and we didn't get one, so now the foe has completed it. The foe not only gets the card, but only their dice score any points. So here the foe would get 4 points because it's 2 points per die, and even though the ally, Conan may have used one of the allies' dice and was hoping to roll the last symbol themselves, um, yeah, they don't get anything. So you have to, and the order in which this goes is going to be important because it's going to be player order, or say in this case the ally would be rolling first, so Conan would get to the benefit of knowing what they've rolled, and if the ally is going first and they've rolled everything that's needed, it's in Conan's better interest to say, yeah, let's just complete it. I'm just going to give you the points so that I know that it's completed, and I know that as Conan, I'm going to get this card. I'll get the rewards for it, and that way we can shut the foe out completely. But it's just a matter of how lucky are you feeling as Conan, and how greedy are you, and how desperate are you to not give anybody points. Those all factor into it, but you got to really worry when the foe has rolled everything you need. If you don't use it, you got to really hope that you've got your own backup plan. And with the ally in there, you have it's better to give the points to the ally, generally speaking, so that you know that that adventure can be completed under your careful leadership, and not have to lose it all and get nothing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic that Conan and the Ally have because they're joined at the hip, but at the same time, they're still ostensibly rivals. Only one can win the day at the end of the day, of course. And because they can both move each other, you could like sort of tug of war on the Conan token. I want to go here. No, I want to go here. But then that kind of results in neither of you getting what you wanted, and nobody gets any points. And then the foe is going to start moving up on the plot track. So you have to work together, but you almost have to like compromise. Someone wants to go somewhere and someone wants to go to a different place. You have to say, well, at the end of the day, Conan, I can get us there in 3 moves because of my sail action, my pirate die that I can use to sail us there. But you would have to move us there with movements. So I say we go to my place, but I'll use my fate tokens to help us with the encounters that we're gonna have to face there, or something like that. Like you have to really kind of you have to negotiate with each other, and it's just hilarious because it's the ally, but you're still butting
Exactly.
heads here and there.
Which is pretty
It's
on
like a
brand when you look at these characters. If you know the comic books, they're all they all have their moments where they're with Conan, they're fighting at his side, they're helping him out, but they've also kind of been at odds on occasion, some more than others for sure. And sometimes it's not a matter of I'm against Conan, but I'm constantly leading him into danger and forcing him into perilous situations or requiring, and Conan, you must do this. And Conan is like, ugh, all right, I don't know why I hang out with you so much because you're always getting me in trouble. So it really works. I feel like it's really thematic. So you do have this situation where they'll help Conan when it's mutually beneficial, but sometimes they're like, Conan, I had to do this, and I'm sorry, I betrayed you a little bit, but I'll try to make it up to you later on. Yeah, that is constantly happening in those stories, so
it's
works
like
out.
those Christmas dinners that get very late with all the relatives, and people start talking to each other, and they remember why they only see each other once a year, and people start arguing, but no one really wants to make a scene. That's the relationship that I see every time, like between the Ale and Conan. Just mutual aggression, but never direct. It's just I really want to do that, but I want to be petty against you, so I'm doing the opposite just to spite you. It's a very fun like dynamic, as Jade said, but it's really hard, at least for me, to put this dynamic into actual play and actually come out on top, because the ally is a really strange role to play, but honestly, it's very very fun.
Yeah, you can
One
get some
interesting
very.
thing
Go
about
ahead. Go ahead.
one interesting thing about their relationship is how Conan kind of acts as a bodyguard for the ally. So like if the foes move a challenge token onto Conan, Conan is always the one to face it, and the ally can only get affected by a token if they are the one that moves Conan or the token. So you could kind of go down a path towards a kingdom where you're like beset on all sides by challenge tokens, and you yourself don't have to worry about the consequences because if the foe moves one of those tokens onto you, Conan's going to suffer the brunt of it, which might even work in your favor. And so
Yes.
as long as you're not yourself moving in, you can kind of be like, I've got hell to the left of me and hell pack to the right of me, but I'm not really too bothered as long as I don't step foot in there myself.
Conan's a big guy and he makes a big target.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, if you've had a chance to play the game, let us know in the comments what sorts of things have been clicking for you. Let us know the areas where you're still struggling, and I'll try to see if I can give you some advice. Also, let us know what you'd like the Savage board to discuss in the future. So we're going to definitely do some more in-depth stuff and zero in on specific things like just encounters and different characters and the Bazaar deck and some of the expansion material and how what order you should start doing things in and how to take advantage of them. There's a lot of interesting modules, all the expansion stuff and the unlocks and stretch goals that were made as part of the campaign. It's all very modular, so it's easy to plug and play a lot of it in there. And we'll go into depth on that. But yeah, and let us know any other comments and your thoughts on the Adventures of Conan. So thank you guys for joining me in our first episode, and hopefully we'll see you guys again soon.